Hi everybody and welcome back to Attack of the Grey Pile. This is part 2 of a two-part series where we painted a Black Templar Lieutenant. If you haven't seen part 1, please pause this and go watch that so you have an idea of what we did in that episode so that you know where we are in this episode. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Alright everybody, to start this video off, we're going to disassemble the model back into its major subcomponents. We want to start by disassembling the arms from the figure, then the shield from the left arm. After that, we're going to take the left arm and apply it to a base using blue tack. We are starting by painting a layer of clear gloss varnish on the shoulder pauldron. This will help give the decal a more ideal surface to adhere to later when we apply it. While the shoulder is drying, we can go ahead and remove the other major components that are still on the model, that being the backpack and the sword. Once that's complete, we can start doing an edge highlighting around the scabbard and the holster for the pistol. What we are going to do here is we're going to replicate the wear and tear of leather being bent over and over again, where it gets bright and a little crackly in those edges. As you can see here, my access to the top of the holster was impeded by the ribbons hanging off of the tilt shield, so I decided to remove that so that then I can gain better access. Remember, if you can remove stuff to make it easier to paint, you might as well do that. It'll make your life easier in the long run, I promise you. Here we're applying the same treatment to the pouches on the back and the hanging strap. We will also apply this to the belt as well to enhance that feel of realism on the model. After that's been completed, we're going to move up just ever so slightly into a brighter tan so that then it really emphasizes that wear and tear. Once we've done the edge highlighting, we will then draw lines that will be moving perpendicular against the edge highlight to really give that worn leather effect. Now I know this may look a little too bright at the moment, but later on when we start applying our Agrax Earthshade, it will help knock it back down to a duller color and will help tie it all together with the rest of the surface that we're trying to paint here. Now we're going to repeat that process on the sword scabbard. Now, you'll notice here that I'm being rather chunky when it comes to the application of this brighter brown. That's totally fine because we expect the wear to not be very uniform. That's completely normal and natural for leather being used in this application. I'm painting the perpendicular stripes a little bit more broad this time because the surface of the scabbard is significantly larger than the surface of the holster. We can get away with painting a little bit larger and trying to enhance that detail. Now I'm reapplying a gold paint to the buttons on the pouches on the small of the back of the model. On the last video, I had to go back and apply a brown glaze to try and hide some overspill of the gold, and now I'm trying to re-emphasize the highest peak of the button so it really stands out. While I have the gold paint out, I'll also go ahead and pick out the rivets on the backpack and start tracing out some of the exhaust ports again so that then they are brighter and stand out against that orange wash we applied last time that gave the appearance of exhausts being active and exhausting hot air. I will also take the opportunity to touch up on the corona that's mounted on the backpack. As you can see, I did miss some spots in the first video where black paint is still very visible within the ring. Now let's start painting the wax on those purity seals. First I'm going to apply a Screamer Pink, which is a very dark violet pink, which will really emphasize the appearance of the wax. Very similar to the candles that almost everybody's parents had back in the day. While the Screamer Pink dries for the wax stamps of the purity seals, I'm going to go ahead and attack this mouth of the scabbard that I forgot to paint in the first video. It's okay to go back and touch up. I'm using the same gold that I used in the crossguard so that then it adds uniformity to the overall appearance. Now I'm reapplying gold paint to the rivets. You'll notice that I do accidentally cause a bit of overspill onto the surface of the shield, so I will go back after that and apply a wash of black paint to help hide that overspill. Here I'm retracing the gold borders of the red sash across the tilt shield, as I feel that the opacity could be increased a little bit better over what it was last time. Now I'm painting the rivets on the left shoulder pauldron, as I want to try and pick those out before I start to apply the decal. While I was painting the rivets on the shoulder, I also noticed that there's a purity seal tucked away in the armpit on the left shoulder, so I'm going to go ahead and address that now. Now it's time for me to apply the decal to the left shoulder. First I'm going to start by applying Tamiya's Mark Fit Super Strong Decal Adhesive and Softener. This will help ensure that the decal conforms nicely to the surface and adheres strongly to the surface. You can see I'm having a little bit of trouble with the cross decal as it's a little crooked on the surface. I still have some time to work with it, and I'll use the brush underneath the decal to try and turn it and shift it into the place I want. Now to stain the tabard. It's very much a trust the process situation for the next couple of steps for the tabard. First, I'm going to start with Seraphim Sepia. It's going to give it a very yellow and dingy kind of color, which is a little too bright for what I want, but it'll help set an undertone for the next layer that we're going to apply later, which will be Agrax Earthshade, which is more dirty and darker brown kind of wash over the top. It will tie in together and will really make the tabard look old, worn, and severely degraded and in dire need of a wash, if I'm honest. I have also applied Seraphim Sepia to the pistol holster and the purity seals. I want to make them look old and like they've been on the armor for a period of time. The reason why I'm applying it to the leather is so that then it helps tie both the brighter tan brown to the darker base tone brown, and it will really help give it a color filter and tie it all together in the end. For the large scroll on the shield, I'll be applying Agrax Earthshade. I want it to look like a permanent fixture on the shield, thus being older than the purity seals hanging from it and the armor. I will also do this to the scroll that's mounted on the right shoulder, as well as the shoulder pauldron itself, as that red is just a little too bright and I want to make it look darker. Speaking of too bright, it's time to darken up that mohawk stripe on his helmet. Again, using Agrax Earthshade, I'll trace that out, and then I'll start attacking the tabard with Agrax Earthshade. Now that the decal has had plenty of time to adhere itself to the surface of the shoulder, it's time to apply another coat of clear gloss. What this will do is it will help hide the edges of the decal sheet and keep it from looking quite like a sticker on the surface, and more like it was actually painted to the surface of the model. This is something to keep in mind when working with decals. Later, I will be sure to apply a matte varnish on top of that, so that then the shoulder isn't quite as bright amongst a very matte finished model. This blue-green that you see me applying to the gold is Nailac Oxide. I'm trying to replicate the oxidation that you see on the Statue of Liberty. I'm using this to try and emphasize that these components on the armor are actually very, very old and have seen quite a lot of use in combat. It's time for that matte varnish. A very liberal coat to the left shoulder will ensure that all of that surface will be uniform with the rest of the model. Applying more of that Nailac Oxide to the shield, as I want to try and replicate water streaking coming down the surface of the shield as if he were holding the shield in a defensive position over several years of his career and just never really washed it or wiped it down. Now I'm getting to apply one of my favorite effect paints. It's a rust water-soluble paint by Dirty Down. It really has a very nice matte finish once it dries and truly replicates that really dry, gritty rust texture that we're all used to seeing. I'm also applying the rust paint to the ocula on the chest, as I want to try and pick out some of the lower recesses on the ocula and really emphasize the details. Now I'm applying Agrax Earthshade to the scabbard of the sword. I'm going to apply this a few more times until I get the opacity that I would like that will help tie both those high tones and low tones together on the surface. Here I'm applying a global wash of Nuln Oil. This will help knock down the super harsh contrast of that very bright gray on the black armor. It will also help tie the surfaces together and really give it a worn appearance overall. Now I'm tracing out the outer edges of the Purity Seal wax stamps with Vallejo Scarlet. This will help add realism, as when you apply a wax stamp, usually the outer raised edges are slightly brighter than the center area. Now we get to take some of the first steps of reassembling the model. I'm now pinning the sword back to the model so I can apply Agrax Earthshade yet again to the sword and the handle. This will help pick out the details of the wraps of the handle, and then after that I will continue to chase the tabard and the scabbard, as well as the leather accessories on the belt in the back. At this point, I've noticed that the skull on the cross in his right forearm has not yet been painted. I have decided that I'm going to paint it with ivory so that it stands out amongst its background. I've also decided to paint the skull on the backpack as well as the skull on the chest in ivory so that then they too stand out amongst their backgrounds. Now it's time to replicate prayers on the purity seals. I will be using a very fine pointed brush to apply black paint and scribbles across them to replicate prayers written on them. These purity seals act as a way to ward off evil spirits of the warp in the lore of 40k. It's time to address that squeaky clean left shoulder pauldron. Let's get some dirt on it. Time to put some Agrax Earthshade on it and tone it down just a few notches. While I still have the Agrax Earthshade out, I can address a few spots that I want to apply it again, such as that white spot in the tabard that I missed just below the belt line, as well as readdressing the scabbard to help achieve that uniformity that you would see on worn leather. I'm also applying one more layer of Agrax Earthshade to the right shoulder and one layer to the pistol, as I want to try and tone those down as well before I get to the point of weathering and actually setting the tone of the model. Now it's time for me to start creating the base. I'm going to start by cutting sheets of cork into small little plateaus, which will then become a rock formation that he will be standing on. I want to try and make it appear as though he's standing in a tundra with a few crystals jutting out of the snow in front of him while he's engaging a target in the distance. Using the non-stick backing of the first layer as a stencil, it will help guide me into the shape that I need for the next layer. Once I have it applied, I will start to drag my craft knife across the exposed surfaces to help give it a more jagged appearance. It's a small trick when using cork to really make it look like stone. Now it's time to create the crystal formation. To do this, I'll be using aquarium stones that I bought from Hobby Lobby. I will be supergluing these to the base as they're made of glass. I really want to try and sell the idea that he is on a faraway planet in a frozen tundra. After the glue has set for the stones, I will then start to apply a base coat of Stirland mud to the base. This is to ensure that just in case the snow that I apply later leaves an opening, it doesn't reveal the bare cork or bare black plastic of the base. I want to try and make this look as realistic as possible. Now that the base has had time to dry, it's time to transfer the model. I can finally cut the securing peg that's used to mount it to the original base, and then apply superglue to bond the model to the cork on the base. Once it's done, I can start to apply my favorite snow texture that I use for all my Black Templar minis. As you can see, I'm being very liberal with my application of this snow texture paint. It's called Valhallan Blizzard, and I will apply it very liberally to the base as well as to the model to really sell that he is in the terrain that I am trying to depict him in and really give that appearance of realism. It's important to pay attention to where you're applying the snow. As you can see, I'm avoiding applying it directly to the exhaust vents. However, I am applying it to the upper armor on the backpack, as I suspect that location, after enough snowfall, would still remain cold, even though the exhaust is blowing out hot air. Here you can see I'm starting to scrape away the brim of the base with my thumbnail. I want to try and make this as level as possible before I start painting the brim in Celested Gray. I like to use this for my Black Templar as it ties in very well with the tundra terrain and appearance that I'm trying to go for most of this army. As you can see, it's taking several coats of this paint to achieve the opacity that I would like on the brim of this base. It will take some time, but I promise you it will be worth it in the end. Just take your time, breathe, and you'll get the desired results that you are hoping to get. For the muzzle of the pistol, I'm using a blue-green by Vallejo mixed with cold white to really add to the opacity. There you have it, everybody. That's part 2 to the 2-part series where we painted a Black Templar Lieutenant. I hope y'all enjoyed it. If you did, please consider hitting the like button, or subscribing, or even leave a comment. I'm open to suggestions on what I should do next. I've got a few projects already lined up, but I'm more than open to suggestions, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Have a good one. See you later.